Hello, everybody. We're just waiting for everyone to get into this fireside chat today. And you can, in the meantime, look at these drawings and we'll come back to them later on in the fireside chat. We'll just give it a brief minute just to make sure that everyone can jump into this webinar. Just 30 more seconds, and I think we'll just start shortly. All right. Let's begin. So hello and welcome to today's fireside chat. What does the future of HR look like? And I'm Michelle from marketing, and I will be the host and the interviewer today. And in this webinar, you have the option to ask questions if you want. And you can do that by just putting your mouse down below, and then the Q&A function will pop up and you can ask questions anonymously. And we will try to answer them during this webinar when it makes sense. So as I said, this fireside chat is about the future of HR, and maybe in more particular, like around HR development. And we have found, we think, just the right person to talk about this topic, and that is Birgitte Riis. Can you wave and say hi, Birgitte?
Hey, glad to be here.
Good to hear that. So she's sort of like I think I called her an HR extraordinaire or something like that, but she's sort of like a lot of experience within HR. She has a long list of accomplishments, and she's a member in the, let me get this right, Learning and Development Council at the Global Conference Board. And so that's very impressive. And she has 20 years experience within learning excellence and 10 years focusing more strategically on learning and development, specifically within sort of like finance and pharma. So, and there's much more on that resume, but I don't want to list them all. But yeah, so she's more than capable of taking you through today's topic. And yeah, so in the invitation we had, we sent out around this webinar, we had 3 topics. And I'm just going to stop sharing the screen just so you might be able to see me a little better. So the invitation had 3 topics, and the first of them was, what do you think people and culture might look like in 10 years? And we had also around organizational development and why HR plays an important role in that. And the last one was what an HR system needs to support in the future. So that was sort of the plan for, that's something we're going to talk about later in this fireside chat. But first of all, I want to ask Birgitte, because we put this drawing in the beginning of this when people are coming in. So Birgitte, I'll ask you, what do you think we come from, and where are we going? And if you're thinking about this drawing that people saw.
Thank you, Michelle, for the nice welcome, and thank you guys for joining this fireside chat. Fancy name. Yes, the drawing that we looked upon here in the entry to this webinar, in a very easy way sums up the headlines of what is going on in people development these years. So so going from the old paradigm of filling up people as tanks and doing formalized learning, and moving towards watering people's roots instead and making sure that they grow and develop by themselves. And that is kind of a huge shift, and it takes a lot of different approaches from how we work with people development in the organizations, and also by how the learning and development team is working and the competencies needed in the team. So a lot of changes, and also not some changes that are done just overnight, because it's also about our perception of learning. So we usually think of learning as what took place when we were educating ourselves at the universities or schools that we attended. So sitting down, being facilitated by a teacher, telling us all the wise stuff that we needed to contain and learn and bring aboard to our own knowledge pool. But that is not how we're working with organizational development anymore. So it's way much more about creating the environment, creating the culture that makes people grow and develop by themselves.
Yeah, that really makes sense. And also, like, that is sort of like a perfect start in this sort of fireside chat, because it's sort of like before and after thing, and we are like focused on the future here, but good thing to like talk a little bit about the past to learn from that. And so these three topics that I talked about earlier on, the first topic that we have addressed was sort of the people and culture. And so one of the things that we sort of mentioned that we would talk about is like, how do you see people and culture in like 10 years? What do you think it will look like in 10 years, or hope for it to look like?
Well, I think we will kill a lot of existing HR development practices that we know of today. We will kill some of the very structured approaches and bring in new ones. And the reason for that is that things is changing so rapidly at the moment, and we need to be able to respond to those changes at the speed of business. And I think HR, with all the processes that we hold on to these years, we do not respond at the speed of business. And we hear it again and again from all kinds of different organizations that business is like, now we need to involve HR, and I need to develop my leaders. HR do not have the right things available, so I'm just going to go outside the organization and buy something else. And that needs to change. People development needs to be at the core of what we do when we execute on our strategy and deliver on our business goals. I mean, no business can develop faster than its people. No business can create great results if we don't have people with the right competencies and mindsets to do that. So that is how we're going to do people development in the future. And that means, for instance, working with career programs, just to take one example. That is an example of what I would kill. I mean, I wouldn't do that. I would create an environment where learning is available at the point of need for people in small nuggets when they need it 24/7. And then I would, when I had that in place, then what we're seeing is that we'll work way much with the culture, with understanding what learning really means, and that working is learning and learning is working. No one can work if they don't learn. They just don't need to learn a lot of stuff that's not relevant right now, but what is relevant right now to succeed in the task that I have today, I need to learn. And we actually do it already. We do it, but we just don't think of it as learning. We do it when we ask a peer of advice. Can you help me do this Excel sheet nicer? Can you help me prepare for this presentation? So that is also learning. That's social learning, learning through peers. And then we also do it when we learn by experience, when we are stretched into new assignments that we might feel a bit uncomfortable to do because that is not within our comfort zone. That is also a learning activity going on. So we do it, but that's what we want to create an environment where that is way more visible and acknowledged. So I think that's so in the example of killing the career development programs, what I would do instead would to create this architecture where learning is available, and then make it very easy to understand what are the different job families, what are the different roles we have in our organization, and then making it part of our culture in the organization that whenever someone of my colleagues are knocking at my door asking, your job seems interesting, can you tell me about what's going on? Yes, of course, I will spend time doing that. And that is, so it's not something that is drilled down from top, but it's something that is created by the people themselves, and it's driven by their own curiosity and their courage and their growth mindset that I want to learn, I want to develop, I want to stay in this organization and not become obsolete. And unfortunately, what we do see a lot going on is that when people do need to develop in many organizations, not all, but in many, people tend to leave the organization to go and get a job elsewhere to develop, because it's too difficult to understand how I can develop into a new role in my existing organization. Not all, of course, organizations, but many.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, I think. Like, also leading back to that picture about like letting people grow instead of like just putting knowledge into their brain like that. So developing with the company, right? That's super important. And one of the things that you touched base on now was also like the business strategy. Can you maybe, what are your thoughts on HR development or HR in general, like sort of having an influence on the business strategy?
I think many organizations are thinking right now these years to put people development outside of HR, not because it's not HR, because of course it is, but be more visible that this is part of a strategy execution team. So as I said before, organizations can only grow as fast as its people. And that also goes for change. And if we sit close to the strategy, then we can act proactively and should act proactively so that we're part of the strategy decision making, and not because we necessarily need to exercise power to change the strategy, but for us to be present around the table when that is created, so that we are in a position where we can act proactively and have development activities going on if something in the strategy is changing dramatically. And that takes a different culture or different competencies or capabilities in the organization.
Yeah. Is there like any challenge? You already talked a little bit about the challenges today in people and culture. Are there any challenges you feel like that are mention worthy, or something like you would sort of like to address around people and culture, like things you're seeing right now that is a challenge?
Yes, I think the main challenge is how to grasp what is learning. Getting rid of what I also mentioned in the beginning, the old paradigm of thinking that learning is the formal part of learning, the courses we take, the e-learnings we do. And for many years, in L&D, we've worked with the 70-20-10 mindset. I'm sure you guys all know about that, but it is as if we haven't really understood it, or we're not working with it in a concrete way. And that is one of the big challenges. In my view, the L&D function should not spend more than 10% of their time on producing formal learning. That should be sent outside of the organization. We can have formalized learning online, generic content. We can do a whole Harvard degree online today. We don't need to create any content or facilitate any sessions by ourselves in L&D anymore. So 10% of the time spent in the team only on that, and then spent the 20% of how do we create an environment where social learning can take place, and spent the majority of the time, the 70% of the time, on how we can create processes and procedures in our organization where people can stretch into new assignments and new experiences. So that's one of them. And the other challenge I would mention is that it takes courage to do it, because it feels as if we're losing control. It's very easy to control. We have a leadership program. We have transition programs for leaders. If they're new in their role, they will join the New in Your Role as a Leader program, and they will start on 1st of March and they will finish by the 7th of September. And we know that now they've produced and or completed their program. But so it takes some kind of letting go of control in that transition from going from formal learning into watering people's roots. Simply just, trust that we have the right people in our organization. And of course they want to succeed in their role. If they don't, maybe they're not the right people for us. That's another discussion. Let's not dig into that. But I mean, create this trustworthy environment where we can let go of control, because that's how we thrive. That's how we work and how we grow. That's how we grow when we're private persons. We do seek knowledge when needed. And of course, we will do that in the organization as well. But there is a transition challenge also from people themselves, that we tend to think when we enter the doors of our organization that if I'm going to be a good leader, I will wait for someone to come and give me my new leadership course, or maybe I will ask for it, but I will need for someone to do something for me so that I can be a good leader. And we need to twist that upside down so that it's my responsibility when I walk in the doors of my organization to stay on top of my expertise and develop every day.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like sort of dividing the responsibility in some way. So we also talked about that we were gonna dive into some organizational development. You sort of, or I feel like this is all sort of intertwined in some way. So there will maybe be some points that will be mentioned again and again, but I really feel like there are some that are worth mentioning again and again. But you already sort of talked about it, but this high impact learning culture, like how do you create that in the future, or like what's your vision around that sort of learning culture?
First of all, I would just, creating a high impact learning organization makes sense to the business, because research shows that we have 18% higher chance of hiring and attracting the right people. We have 23% higher retention rates. A lot of numbers show that people want to stay in an organization that makes them grow and advance in their career. So it makes sense to the business to invest in producing a high learning organization, high impact learning organization. So how to do that? That's how to change a culture. It's not done overnight. But of course, it starts, depending on the organization. I think it is a movement that comes both from top and also from bottom up. So we need to have a clear executive group that's very clear on your development is at the core of our success. So it needs to be very clear that this is not something that is nice to have, that when you spend time on developing your skills, this is not something that you should feel that you don't have time to do, because it's actually business critical for the organization that you do that. So having that communication very clearly from top is a great place to start. Many organizations have difficulties on how do we find time to develop. Well, we do, and especially if we don't spend more time than 10% on the formal part, but do learning at work in the 70 and the 20. And then, of course, when you move a culture, it takes years, and I think it's simple is good. learning less is learning more. So keep it simple. So what is it you want to change? You do not change a company culture completely, and you don't want to do that. But maybe if your strategy changes, you want to turn the wheel on some areas and then focus on that and create these campaigns. I could give an example. We wanted learning to be, creating a learning organization and a learning culture was what we wanted most. So in the beginning, we didn't pay attention to what people would learn. We would just create this culture. So we only spoke about learning, and we created, and I have some peers also from the Learning Council, created a curiosity month and created a curiosity wall, just to take a very tangible example of walking into the campus, creating footsteps on the floor, making people go to the curiosity wall and post, what am I curious about? What do I want to learn this week? And just to have it spoken and have it living in the organization is one of the drivers you can use to change a culture. And then back to keep it simple, because if people think that they need to change everything, they're not going to change anything at all. So we be very specific on what it is that we want to change at this point.
Yeah, that was a very cool way to make it tangible. I think that's great inspiration, I hope, for also people listening out there, like things you can do to make it like very hands-on. So in some of we had sort of like some preliminary talks, and in some of those, you talk a lot about the importance of being fact and impact driven. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, data is key, and I think that is some of the weaknesses of the old paradigm of L&D that was more intuitive. We learning people, we kind of felt that we knew what is needed, and we need leaders who will be better at this and that. We don't. In the future, we will not work like that anymore. We will work very data-based. We will work proactive with our data. And we do that already today, but I think in most organizations, the maturity of having good people data is still quite low. We're good at having people data when it comes to the formal parts of the people processes in the organization. But when it comes to people development, we're still at quite a low maturity level. But that is changing rapidly. And just also to take a very concrete example, I guess all of us in this call have been exposed to happy sheets after attending a course or a webinar. So how did you like the content? How did you like the speaker? How did you like the lunch? How did you la 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 la? And we filled those out, and that was what we measured upon in the old paradigm of learning and development. Look how successful we are. That our people are happy with what we deliver. We don't measure on that anymore, or at least we shouldn't. We measure on impact, on what has been learned. So we do pre-assessments on key headlines of the topic. So what is your maturity at this stage on these three main topics? And then we measure upon it straight after, and we measure upon it 3 months later as well. And so when we talk about people development moving into the business, this is what it means. I mean, using data to show real learning outcomes, resulting in changed behaviors, resulting in impact and business results. It's not an easy task, and it can be overdone. Let me just say that out loud as well, because it takes a ton of time to drill this down into specific behaviors and figure out how to measure on it. So sometimes you don't want to do that. Sometimes you just do like they do in the airline industry. They report back on seats sold on an airplane. Does this give a concrete example or concrete measurement on the success of the airline organization? Nope, but it gives a fairly good indication. It's better to have 100% seats sold than only 20%. So we also measure on activity as a one step moving towards a working database.
Yeah, well, I feel like later on when I pull out the poll, I will be a bit embarrassed because that's exactly what you're saying. We're not doing anymore, but just
but it's fine in situations like this, because of course no one would have really changed and learned something. This is really inspiration. So that's
I get your point. I was just it was just a funny coincidence. Anyway, so I think we need to move on, also talking just quickly, also talking about the HR systems, and how do you feel like, or what kind of support do you need in a system in the future to sort of build under that future that you want to create for HR development?
Yeah. So in people development and in learning, leadership and talent development, we have previously worked very much with LMS systems, learning management systems, and we still need those because they help us send out learning when we need to. For instance, in compliance training, where we need to know that everyone did this e-learning, just simply to know that they're aligned with and compliant. But we need more than that. We need LXPs, learning experience platforms, to put on top of the architecture, so that would be the one point of entry to all development activities in the organization. And LXPs take a different, they're kind of born from a different perspective than the LMS. The LMS is born from the perspective of the administrative L&D people, that we need a vehicle to drive the learning activities that we need to send out to the organization, where the LXP has a point of departure coming from the people perspective, the user perspective. So how do we create an inspiring digital platform that is sending out learning activities at the point of need in small nuggets, personalized, using machine learning, creating a Netflix-like look and feel for people to jump into. Other people who did this course also did that, or last week you did this, maybe this is interesting for you. So that this is all driven in a machine learning system. Yeah. And of course, then we could move on to AI and virtual reality and stuff like that. But I think maybe that would be a whole new topic. And then
that'll be the next time, I guess. We're around the sum up. I think, like, let's just try to sort of sum up what we have touched based on today. So if you had like one thing you wanted people to remember about this fireside chat around people and culture, what would that be? What's the one thing you want them to remember?
Be curious and be bold.
Yeah.
I think and try to let go of control and really dig deep into understanding the importance of social learning and experience-based learning, because that is how we learn as adults in the organization. And I think I have been saying the same things a number of times, so I would actually just bring on a new bonus thing that just came to my mind. We in people development, we used to have there used to be a bias that if you were in a global organization, you kind of it was easier to develop your career if you were in headquarters. It was more difficult if you were sitting in smaller offices or in other countries. Now, after the global lockdown, we see another bias emerge, which is a bias of people who are actually back in office tend to have better opportunities of developing their career than people staying more at home, which is a challenge, because most organizations today have fully embodied and acknowledged that flexible working is how we're going to work in the future. So that is a new thing for us to pay attention to in the people development space. How do we make sure that people who work more from home as opposed to those coming into office still have the same development opportunities?
Yeah, that's a very great and valid point. That is something, I guess, a huge challenge for HR to sort of deliver on in some way, or like facilitate, or how you may call it. We also talked about the HR role in regards to organizational development. Is there something like a great sentence that people can lean on, or something like that?
I think that, you know, the sentence will be no organization can develop faster than its people.
Yeah, that was
So
a great
make
one.
sure that you sit close to the strategy execution office when you sit in people development.
Yeah, that's definitely one I will remember. That's a very good one. And we just talked about the HR system just like minutes ago. But like, what do you think that there is a system that can, or do you feel like a system can support this future that you're talking about?
Sure. I mean, we can't do it without the system, because we need the system to distribute learning for us, because we need it to be out there at the speed of business. And that also means that our role in L&D will change to become curator roles, because we cannot just open all access to all kinds of learning, because people will drown in it. So we need a system who will help us through machine learning to push relevant content to the individual, and we will just sit back and be curators of great content.
Yeah. Well, I think it's time to wrap up. We're, I think, 1 minute over, so I'll come back to you in a little while. I'll just quickly launch this poll that I've talked about. Not so proud, but it's there, and we need to measure. So if you can fill out the poll that I just shared, that would be very lovely for us, so that we can get some feedback on where we need to improve. And we of course measure a lot of other things as well, just like Birgitte told us about. So I hope that or I've learned something new today as well, so that's very cool. Just some quick practical stuff while this poll is going on. There will be a recording of this webinar in your email tomorrow. There will be an on-demand version of this fireside chat on our YouTube channel, and there will always be great content on our LinkedIn page. I will provide you all the links in the email you will receive tomorrow. And I think I'll finish. Thank you for answering the poll. And then I'll say thank you so much, Birgitte. This was it was so cool to pick your brain, as we said before. Yeah, there's so much for us to learn about HR, and I really feel like we got to look into the future here, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're so welcome. Yeah, and then I guess all that's left is have a very good day, everybody. Also you, Birgitte, and we'll see you the next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.